He was also a psychiatrist, and he was talking about how the colonized, that's what we are, you know we colonized, right? What it took for the colonized to heal. And I'm thinking it's important to say this because there are a lot of people you hear talking about how black people need to heal. That's a lot of times healing. Well, Fanon said in order that the colonized has to kill the colonizer in order to be healed. So you get healthy, you get mental health, you want to end high blood pressure. You want to end all those things that make you not say anything when this young white person in the department store insults your intelligence just because you want to buy something. When you look like that, there was security, right? You know what I'm talking about. The fact that you can't get off the wrong exit on the interstate and for fear when you look in that rearview mirror, you're gonna see that little bubble gum machine in the mirror and the panic and stuff. You don't think that messes with your health? The elections that we have every 4 years, oh God, please let a white man get a good white man get elected this time. You don't think that affects your health? Slavery is horrible. Okay, voting rights, we believe the right to vote and is a fundamental right, but beyond that, the right to have something to vote for. And so so you know, we demand the use of proportional representation voting system. Proportional representation, voting system. If you're going to vote in this thing, as long as they allow voting to happen, as long as we allow voting to happen, if we're going to vote, then you need to at least have power equal to the percentage of black people that exist here. Don't you think so? And so that's throughout the whole system. 16, U.S. out of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Get the hell out. 17, the West must pay its debt to Africa and its descendants. Fail. 18, free Palestine. Down with Israel apartheid. 19, climate change and toxic pollution by capitalism must end. So that's what we do. This is ours. And if the Democratic Party wants to adopt this platform, that's up to them. But whether they do or not, come November 9th, regardless of the outcome of November 8th, our struggle heats up to make this 19-point platform in the national agenda for black political self-determination. This is ours. And this ain't something that you work on every 4 years. This is something we work on every damn day. Every day, you understand? This is our program. Thank you very much, Sister Lisa Urudu. It is not a movement. It is a way of life from now until eternity. I just want to remind people, please, if you have your wonderful cell phones, to just put them on vibrate or silent. Thank you so very much. And before going any further, I just want to take a few minutes to give special recognition to a special contingent that is here with us, and that is the children. I'm just going to ask that the children stand. They have been with us. You need to know that we love you. We need to recognize the history that children, that our babies that have had from being on the front line of the struggle. I will say right here and right now, and this is for our babies, our children. They aren't with us yesterday. They were with us all day. Yesterday, they're here today. We love you. You are special. You are brilliant. And we're doing this for you. We're doing this for you. And just one other thing I want to say to Black youth, because I'm so proud of them. Don't ever let anybody demonize you the way they try, because no one in this country has a history of standing up for righteousness and fighting on the front line, and you were spared nothing But they lynch our children too. And black youth, and I'm so proud of the work that I see that's going on. So I want to give a shout out to all of them that are here and the work they've been doing. Also, we have our declaration. Now, does everybody have a copy of the declaration, this pamphlet right here? We do have them, and we also have our agenda. Okay, is Lucy Murphy here? Okay, now's the time for corporate presentation. She was going to do it, but she's not here. So we're going to be calling up our brother. It's soon true. If I ever mispronounce your name, please correct me. Oh. First, I want to say that it's an honor to be here at this very historic convention. Like she said, my name is Soon True, and this piece I have is called "Who Are You?" They got a gun, you gotta keep one on you too. The eyes be showing red, but they wearing blue. They say obey the law and don't you make a move. Next thing you know, you laying on the news. Family crying while they stuck with the blues. We gotta organize ourselves and then we move. The only time we lining up is photo shoots. What happened to our people? What they do to move? It's not a shock they label me a criminal. Right there in your face on the TV is a subliminal. Some think it's entertainment, but it's much more. Millionaire after millionaire, but can't feed the poor. They school your kids on how to think and act, only to mislead. They trying to keep their thing on track. Agenda hidden roles, never stating facts. They used to keep us down, we just stay on track. Not knowing who we are, we just call it black. They tell you how you look, not where you've been at. Who are you anyway? They never told the truth. So I'm gonna do my best while I'm up in this booth. Who are you? You don't know. Who are you? You don't know. Donkey. Coon, porch monkey, Negro. Different terms just to disagree. I know the stuff. Thank you very much. Recall. Say thank you all. Guru, all power to the people. We free the land and certainly free all the political prisoners. I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful to be here in your presence this afternoon. My name is Brother Khalid Rahim. I represent the African Independence Party, but based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Don't hold that against us, you folks who don't like the stills. But moving along, still this is Sunday, I got to talk about it. And even in the socialist society, we can have the people on the professional football teams and basketball teams. We can look at the model up in Green Bay, where they have some collective ownership. Take it from there. But what I like to talk about seriously is I like to commend everyone for the analysis that's been given so far. What I like to put more focus on is what we can start to prepare to do, right, November 9th. And so we have to really look ahead and look at how important it is to develop independent poverty and stuff like that. They use your data to get money from the federal government every year. And they give that money to people to cure blight and all this kind of stuff, but black people don't get that money. I mean, so there's a basis for all kind of struggle there. And then there's stuff that we have to do also in terms of creating independent economic activity that serves the people, serves ourselves, create collectives and a whole bunch of other stuff. So
we'll talk about the Arbery case.
I can say on that question. I mean, there's a lot more that can be said, but credit union, look right here to the preacher. take your money. And instead of just using the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 you're giving for his anniversary, you know, create a damn crack. Y'all know what I'm talking about, don't you? Y'all give me a this is she's being yeah.
Hold on. We're gonna get started. This is Black No Cop Zone, the official political education press platform for Black Community Control Police, which is a working group of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. My name is Diop Olubala. I'm the chair. I'm a member of the BCCP working group, and I'm based in Philadelphia, and I've been conducting this weekly political education at the behest of our community that demands ongoing summation of current events in the world and even within U.S. borders. So we do this to provide, to report, to contend with imperialist or white media that talk about some of the same issues that we're going to be being addressing right now, but we explain in a report on these issues from the perspective of the African community, from the African working class, because our analysis, our explanation for why these events are occurring is entirely different than the explanation, the analysis that we put forth by imperialist media. So we want to provide that political education for the people so that we know how to maneuver through society and wage strategic struggle that's going to advance our material interests. So that's really important. In addition, we want for our existing organizers to be as capable as possible in terms of, organizing in their communities. So during this process, we put forth organizational mandates in terms of the concrete work that you should be involved in wherever you are located in terms of advancing the objectives of Black community control of the police. And some of those objectives include waging a struggle on the electoral front, to struggle with your local city council to get a Black community control of police resolution passed that would transform the way that police is controlled in the city that you are located, because we are demanding an independent and democratically elected Black community control of police commission that has concrete power to discipline police and to impose the laws that the Black community itself determines to be in our interest. So we're going to talk more about that practical work. Know Your Rights is a part of the work that we encourage you to do in terms of distributing the Know Your Rights card and to attend the mobilizations that the Black is Back Coalition holds around the country all the time. For example, we just came from DC last week on November 6th and 7th, where we just held a march on the White House, the Black People's March on the White House, where we put forth the demands of the Black community: free all political prisoners, Black community control of police now, and also use this march as a rally point to deepen the overall movement's capacity to fight, to gain further clarity on what must be done in this period. And I know this sounds like a lot of just verbiage, but for those who are sincerely interested in leading work on the ground, you should really listen intently to what I'm saying, because everything that I'm saying is how you would take it out to your people. So that's essentially why we do the Black No Cop Zone. And when conditions may change, right now, for example, I'm located in North Philly, 23rd and Ridge, and this is an oppressed African community, and you never know when something may pop off regarding the state. And we want to have stations where there's some degree of political activity, even if it's the political education that we hold on the ground, so that the people are accustomed to organizational and revolutionary leadership and presence in the community when certain objective conditions come forth. We want to be on the ground and in place to provide as much leadership as possible. And we can't do that if we are inside. So we have to be out amongst the people in order to have that relationship sustain itself. So these are some things that I want to say on the rip. Now, in terms of today's topic of discussion, the leading question or the leading topic is going to be the case of the trial that's against the three white men that murdered our brother Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And so, the trial is going on right now. And I want to say, and it got to be really clear. Initially, when the trial was announced, I wasn't particularly interested in addressing that particular question, not because it's not important, but because one, oftentimes the state will use these types of struggles as a means to validate itself. Because if you notice, the ones that is essentially leading the process for adjudication or to provide justice around the question of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery is the same U.S. colonial capitalist state that imposes police occupation in our communities all over the country and kills over one or two Africans every single day. So when you have a situation where somebody who is not formally a pig or an agent of the state, a regular white person, kills an African, and then the state intervenes, says we're going to arrest them and press charges and hold a trial. And if the outcome of that trial is guilty and the white men get locked up, we have to make sure that that outcome does not lead us to the assumption that the U.S. government is legitimate. You see what I'm saying? Because they will use struggles like this as a way to legitimize themselves in the eyes of oppressed people, to say, look, we arrested these guys. You know, we agree with y'all. What happened was they have a term in their legal jargon called hate crimes. And they'll say it's a hate crime and they'll throw the book at these white people if that means placating the masses of African people and redirecting our struggle from a revolutionary trajectory to that of some form of reformism or, you know, within the legal system itself. So that's important for us. And this is part of the reason why I did not prioritize the case of Ahmaud Arbery, because that is essentially what type of thing that contributes to. But at the same time, it's an important issue that everybody is aware of. We don't know the names of the two Africans that died today, but there's two Africans that got killed by the pigs today. We don't know their names. Ain't no rally, protest, or announcement of the trials, or if there will even be one, regarding the pigs that killed these Africans today. So it's our struggle is to deal with the occupation, the military occupation. The strategic enemy of the African community is the colonial capitalist state. And even if these crackers get locked up, that's not going to change the real problem that we are confronted with. And this is not to say that white colonial violence is not real and that it should not be something that we should be organized to prevent and to defeat. But in the final analysis, the basis of white colonial violence is concentrated in the colonial state. So if we want to talk about how all of these issues actually relate to each other. And one thing I want to say as well is that this is a little known fact, perhaps, maybe not. We know it in the real world that the pigs most of the times get away with killing black people. But what you may not be aware of is a struggle in the city of Philadelphia. This brother by the name of David Jones, I believe it in 2017 or 18, he was on a dirt bike in Philly, and the pigs tried to pull him over. He ran, and the pigs shot him in the back and killed him. And initially, the pigs got away. They was dismissed, you know, no problem, you know. But the DA, Larry Krasner, at the demand of the black community, sought to prosecute the cop that killed David Jones. And one of the complications, and you know, Krasner wants to try the guy for murder. And you know, we can unite with that to a certain extent, but we'll talk about that again. But the real thing is the complication that Krasner is confronted with in terms of his legal ability to prosecute these cops is that this Pennsylvania state constitution allows police to shoot or use lethal force against someone who they are trying to arrest for supposed felony. So, for example, if I'm standing here and the police say stop, come in, and I run, as in the case of David Jones, they have the right to shoot me. And all I have to be accused of doing at the point that they shot me is being in the act of committing some type of felony. So, or providing reasonable, probable cause for them to believe that I had committed or in the process of committing a felony. So if they can demonstrate that in the court, then they would be absolved of any responsibility or accountability to my death. And so essentially, in the real world, this means that police have a legal right, so to speak, to pick somebody out the crowd, essentially, and say that they look suspicious and shoot them. And then after the smoke clears, tell the media that they were in the act of climbing in a window to burglarize a home. And so they had to shoot to prevent that, or because I tried to run as they found me. I tried to run, so they shot me as I'm trying to get away. According to the state constitution of Pennsylvania, they have a right to shoot me and kill me under those circumstances. So Krasner is trying to get not the law changed, but for the defense, the cops' defense, to prevent them from citing that Pennsylvania law, saying that the police should not have a right to shoot if the so-called suspect is not involved in a violent crime, because that is there's legal precedence. A case in Nashville, Tennessee, in the 80s, or what had that same situation where essentially the police were found to be wrong for shooting someone who was not posing any physical threat to the cop or anybody else's life. So that Krasner is using that case in Tennessee as the basis to say that right now you should not the law, the Pennsylvania law cannot contradict with a Supreme Court ruling, because that Nashville case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court determined that violence, there has to be some kind of threat of somebody's life in order for the police to be justified in shooting. So but the Pennsylvania state law says they don't have to have that. They can, as long as there's a felony being committed, they can shoot. And so Krasner is trying to, in this case, say that the defense or the court's reason for admonishing the police for shooting David Jones rests in what the state constitution says would be a contradiction or violation of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling of national, constitutional law. So that's the whole struggle. The fact is that, as we said, police get away with murdering black people all the time. And this is because the police is not some extension of democratic government in the lives of black people, but the police function in the black community to protect a social system that requires our labor, our resources, not only here, but where we were stolen from Africa, and to essentially sustain a white economy, a white way of living well on the pedestal of the oppression that African people experienced in the colony, in the ghetto. There's 1,001 examples we can point to that illustrate this colonial relationship. But the fact is that the police are given the right to shoot you in Pennsylvania, and I would imagine most states around the country, because in the final analysis, again, they function as an occupying military, and their objective is to monopolize violence, meaning that if somebody's going to be shooting, it's going to be them, and they will legitimize themselves in doing so, because the objective is not to secure your interest as a colonial subject, but to protect the status quo and to perpetuate a social system that has its origin in Europe and North American governments attack on Africa and oppress people around the world. And again, this may sound like real wordy and like just a lot of talk, but what I'm saying has real implications, because the fact is that if we wanted to, we could build a movement that could destroy the U.S. government and achieve real self-determination for African people and oppressed people around the world, if our minds were convinced that that is possible and that we had a blueprint to do so. And the reason why I say that we could do that is because of the strategic relationship that the African working class has to the U.S. economy and its history as well. in terms of what it even is able to get away with is largely determined by the strength of the Black liberation struggle. Because there's no way that the U.S. government can get away with oppressing anybody around the world and try to make an argument for their doing so when right there within its own bowels, the most genocidal assault on any people on the planet Earth was carried out against Black people right here. And there's all volumes of evidence that we can point to in terms of the violence and the terror. The 2 Africans killed every single day. So when we talk about the Arbery case, we do so in a way that wins African people to understand that the reason why this happened in the first place is because of colonialism. Because there's no place on the planet Earth where African people are secure, and there's no place on the planet Earth where white people, perhaps with the exception now of Haiti, where the missionary just got kidnapped, but there's no place on the planet Earth where white people cannot walk around with confidence knowing that they have an entire imperial system that will, I don't care, I could be in Afghanistan. A white person could be in goddamn Afghanistan and they don't give a damn what goes on around them because they know in the final analysis that the U.S. Military will send an airplane to come get their asses out of there. But Africans and Afghanis and oppressed people around the world never have that security. That's, it's an entirely different reality. So we want the people to know that whatever happens out of this Arbery case should never be summed up as evidence of the legitimacy of the U.S. court system. So, and I raised the example of David Jones and what the Pennsylvania law says to show you how they currently exercise monopoly on violence. The police, and the only thing that stops the pig from doing that, shooting us really like in a mass kind of way, is because they know that there would be resistance that they cannot defeat from the African community. But there's always that tension, and sometimes those killings that do occur lead to mass rebellion, and which is something that the state can never stop. They know this, and the only thing that really ever stops rebellion is the petty bourgeoisie, which exercises a certain degree of influence in our community that tells the people, all right, it's time to cool out, they ready to talk. But the talk never really involves or in its center the interests of the masses of Black people, the demands that we just heard being recited in the video I was playing for Black is Black. That's not part of the discussion, but the only thing that stops the fighting is the petty bourgeoisie that says, all right, it's enough, for the marches stop. You know what I mean? Like, because they the ones, the most organized sector of the community as it sits right now, but that's rapidly changing, that have the ability to call the march in the first place. So, and there's no ideological capacity amongst the workers and shit. So this is why it's so important that we have forces on the ground that's constantly putting out African internationalism. And again, if I'm self-critical, I gotta recognize and salute my leadership, my political leadership, Omali Ishitella, who is the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and my teacher, And the reason why I didn't say that in the beginning, because there's always like certain things I gotta say before I forget, because they like critical. And I said those things, but now we can kind of relax into the other things. But it's important to recognize the chairman because, again, it's not just about a talk show, like hearing a good talk, but it's about being plugged into an organization that has the ability to pursue the objectives that we are discussing right now. So you got to have organization, and we have, our advanced forces among our organization that develop tactics and strategies based on the overall goals of the organization, and put forth analysis. But those advanced forces are not just in like one place, but they're everywhere. They are you, as in terms of as an organizer. You are the advanced force in your community, and so when something happens that nobody else would even care about, maybe the electricity went out, or they're doing construction on your block and there's no place for you to park or whatever the case may be. But sum that up in terms of the colonial basis of the problem and win the people to organization to do something about it. But anyway, so we want to talk about Ahmaud Arbery's case in terms of this brother. He was jogging and I forgot the part of Georgia, but it's a city in Georgia, a county in Georgia, and he's an African, 26 and 27 years old, and this happened, I believe, in 2018. He's jogging down in the park, or and three white men, two in one car, father and son in one car, and the other white man in another car. They approach Arbery as he's jogging, and essentially they get into, he's minding his business, and they are the aggressors, and of course later on they put out, why they, what their stated reason for approaching him is, but the fact of the matter is that he was minding his business, jogging down the street. They ran upon him. They got into even a physical struggle, and then they all three of them participated in shooting Ahmaud, and so and he died as a consequence of that situation. And it took 7 months for the police or for the state to arrest these white men. Initially, the district attorney in that county in Georgia said not to arrest them, and at one point even announced his plan to recuse himself from the case because his son has a relationship with one of the white men that shot Ahmaud. And eventually, the case was transferred to another DA, and who announced that it will be determined if a trial is held. The grand jury will be assembled to determine whether or not these men should be prosecuted and tried for the murder of Ahmaud. The grand jury says yes, there's sufficient evidence, some of which included recorded statements from one of the men saying that calling Ahmaud a nigger, and other statements that alluded to or that connected him to a certain racially motivated racial motivation for the altercation, as opposed to what their story is at this point. Their initial legal strategy is to, and this is a really important part I want to talk about. Their legal strategy at this point is to raise up a citizen's arrest, the right to citizen's arrest. They're saying that their narrative, the white men's narrative, is that they had been a rash of burglaries in the area, and so they believe that Ahmaud was involved in a burglary at the time that he was running, and that was the basis of their approaching him. And they're saying that their approaching him was part of their attempt to place him under citizen's arrest. So that's actually what their legal strategy is at this particular moment. And that is opened up in terms of certain like media outlets and whatnot, white media outlets. And Africans need to talk about this a lot more, because the citizen's arrest question is a designer law, if you want to call it a law. But in that particular county of Georgia, I forget the name of the county, but in that county in Georgia, a citizen's arrest mandate was passed in 1863. And essentially, the citizen's arrest gave, because it was only ones that were citizens, first of all, was white people in 1863. Africans were not then, and still not, although they may give you a social security card, you're still not a citizen. But in 1863, the law was passed specifically to enable white people to place or to detain and arrest Africans who had ran away from slavery or committed some other act of resistance, or what they would refer to as breaking colonial law, which was in place to justify slavery. So an African that organized rebellion or ran away or etc. Would be the white people were given the right to place these Africans under citizen's arrest, as opposed to having to wait or expect or hope that there's an official police officer or other agent of the state in the area. So, and this whole citizen's arrest thing was put forth by, a slave owner, of course, a plantation owner, and part of the so-called Confederacy, which is really not the question. But I just want to give you as much detail in terms of the origin of this particular policy or legal phenomenon of citizens arrest. So that's how it began, as an instrument to essentially to expand the base and the power of the colonial state. And this is not a new strategy because, as Chairman Omali Shatella has taught us, the white or the colonial capitalist state itself was born as a white people's state. And, that's evident even in the way the U.S. Constitution is drafted or reads in terms of stuff like citizens arrest and saying that an African is 3/5, an Indian is 3/5 of human being, etc. But on a greater level, the political and even military strategy that made it possible to consolidate the United States rests in its unity from forces who were not of the bourgeoisie or the capitalist ruling class at that time. So, but patriotism and other ideological and the whole national identity question that revolved around, colonialism, the tradition of, and programs were literally launched by the U.S. government that were one, Tennessee volunteers, for example. The volunteers being regular white people who would take up arms in the campaign to eradicate, to commit genocide against the indigenous people in the so-called West. They called on the white people to join that, and they called them volunteers. So this is one example of how the white people state functions. And, of course, every war essentially that white people fought on behalf of the United States colonial capitalist government or imperialist government, it involved the participation of white people, Marines in Haiti, the U.S.-Mexico War, the Civil War itself, even, and the Vietnam War, etc. It relied heavily on the political unity of the white people themselves. And what was the basis of this political unity? It was the expectation from white people that there would be shared prosperity in terms of, because all the wars that the U.S. government ever fought literally have been wars, imperialist wars, to steal land or to steal land that has been stolen from another imperialist power from that imperialist power. That is the only form of warfare that the U.S. government has ever been involved in. In fact, the first war that the U.S. military fought on so-called foreign soil was the U.S.-Mexico War, where the U.S. sent troops into Mexico. That was the first time that the U.S. military participated in so-called foreign activity. So that's how the whole thing started, and that's important to say. But this question of the citizens' arrest, what you're looking at essentially is that same tradition where the white people themselves see it in their own material interest to participate in the state's campaign of violence and repression against Africans. And again, what's the material basis? The promise of, two-car garage, gasoline anytime you want it, vacations in all types of exotic locations, and essentially the white way of life, shopping malls, and the rest of it. This is the material basis of white opportunism, of the ability of so-called white workers or the masses of white people to unite with the colonial capitalist bourgeoisie against the masses of oppressed workers or workers of oppressed nations around the world. So it's not really complicated, but that's important to understand. And the whole question of citizens' arrest is connected to that same thing in terms of the white people in 1863 in that particular in Georgia, the state of Georgia, were given the right to place any African under arrest that they want to. And that just like in the state of Pennsylvania, those white people that was given the right to place African who ran away or broke some other slave law they had the right to use lethal force against that African if that African was to resist. What we're looking at is the political and military strategy that the U.S. government has employed to maintain the domestic colonial system, and which is essentially like the headquarters of the entire imperialist capitalist system. So that's important. And when we look at these three white men that killed Ahmaud Arbery, and they saying that they did so in the name of preventing burglary by, of course, what they would define as Africans. They had the right to shoot him according to their according to the U.S. law. In fact, you know what I'm saying? In terms of the way it really goes down in the real world, in terms of the historic basis of the whole citizens arrest thing in the first place. You know, but of course, the U.S. government can't get away with everything that it was once able to get away with in terms of these colonial attacks on us, even through the court system, and that is only because the masses of the people have intensified resistance against their attempts to attack our democratic rights and our lives. So, of course, the Black Power Revolution of the 1960s was a critical or even a qualitative leap that occurred in terms of that resistance, where the African working class, unlike in the period that we are in right now, where we still have not consolidated a sufficient revolutionary leadership for the African working class on every front on the map. But we did have that capacity during the Black Power Revolution of the 1960s. And during this period, you had the emergence of the Black Panther Party, which had a revolutionary line, notwithstanding its own contradictions, but it was clear on the critical question of state power and recognition that the police is an occupying military, and the question of African people being self-determined. These are critical, key questions that the Black Panther Party was clear on, and that influenced the overall African population during that period. And it was, in fact, it was the gains and the efforts of revolutionary organization, not just with the Panthers, but the junta of militant organization, which was founded by Chairman Ahmaud down in Florida, is a part of that entire process that we are talking about right now in terms of revolutionary leadership on the ground. And so, but more than that, resistance, anti-colonial resistance, struggle for territory. And there's a lot of examples we can point to, and we'll do so in the future episodes of this. But that was what forced the U.S. government to assume a certain kind of defensive position. Whereas before, Africans was being lynched left and right, but the same white people that was lynching us in the South and in the North fled the same 60 fled the same cities as subsequent to the Black Power Revolution of the 1960s. White people at one point were on the offensive in terms of colonial terror, but when the African community stood up and fought back, then they ran out of the cities and whatnot. So that in itself is evidence of the strength of African resistance. And what we are seeing now from 2014 all the way up until now is intensification of that same resistance, where you saw Ferguson in 2014, and that was followed by a string of other rebellions throughout the country. And this is the only reason why there now are discussions all over the country in terms of police reform. You know, where now, because of the people's resistance, the state is being forced to reform itself so as to disguise its relationship to the African community. But the only reason why I had to do that in the first place was because they had to suppress the resistance of African people. So this is what we are dealing with in this period. And the Ahmaud Arbery case, again, it's unknown how it's gonna fall in terms of, because it will be a jury trial, and everything will be heard, and the jury will decide what the way they want to go. But the fact is, even if they find these white men guilty, quote unquote, it will one, it will be only because of that white power fears the wrath of African resistance. That's the only reason. In fact, the only reason why we even know about this case was because it went viral on YouTube, where prior to that, it was essentially just another one of those two Africans that was killed today. You see what I'm saying? So that in itself contributes to our belief that it is the resistance of the people that is the basis of any decision that the colonial state makes on these trials. So, and that's important to say. So that's one. It's the resistance that will determine the outcome. But two, even if they rule these men, these crackers, to be guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, we have to be very clear that that is in no way, shape, or form evidence of some type of legitimacy of the U.S. court system. So that's extremely important because that informs how we move as a community going beyond the outcome of this trial. Because if it's all about just getting 3 white men convicted, then we all go home tomorrow and we're gonna act like 2 Africans is not being killed by the police the next day and the next. So it's important that we keep the critical question in the center. And the critical question is the fact that the African community is a colonized population that is subject and vulnerable to these types of assaults on a regular basis. And this lays out the discussion, or sets up the discussion, the most important discussion in terms of the political and organizational strategy that we have to implement to overturn the situation. And this is where it may get a little controversial because a lot of people talk a lot of shit. And I'm being real right now. Like a lot of people can come with me as far as I just went up until this point where we start talking about like what really must be done. A lot of people can dress up. You feel what I'm saying? They can dress up and point to all types of like nonsensical and subjective kinds of issues as some determination of where one stands politically. But I'm here to tell you, I've seen police with dreads, right? We've seen goddamn members of the U.S. Senate wearing dashikis, talking about Black Lives Matter, right? We've seen motherfuckers like Joseph Mobutu in Congo, what they once called Zaire, set up our fucking hero Patrice Lumumba, and even as he calls for every African to take an African name, sets up one of the most vicious neo-colonial governments and state entities in the history of the African continent. So we know that it is far more than just about what we say, but it's about what we do. And so right now, what I'm gonna do is lay out what you got to do. So this is where this is the real discussion. So okay, y'all. Like I said earlier, Black community control of the police. We got 3 main objectives that we call in our forces to carry out on a regular basis. And we got these fucking objectives for a reason. One is to conduct the know your rights work so that all the time you are strengthening your community's ability to know the law and to maneuver through the legal system to the best of our ability. However, we know, and this is just the first objective, but I gotta say this because we have no illusions about the colonial nature of the U.S. legal system. In fact, I got a case where the cops literally ran me over while I'm on a fucking GSXR 600, and they say that I'm on a stolen bike, and in the process of pulling me over, where I'm looking for, it's snowy outside, so I'm looking for the next dry piece of street to pull over on. But before I could do so, they literally battle ran me with a SUV vehicle. And so, I was convicted or found whatever of the stolen bike thing. But the point is that they used excessive force, in my estimation, to pull me over. So I'm in the process of doing research to see, well, how can I sue these motherfuckers for running me over in the street? Because that got to be excessive force. And I looked up certain aspects of the law, and they say excessive force essentially as far as anything where they did not do so in the interest of defending their life or the life of somebody else. That's excessive force. You got to run them over. Was running him over going to prevent him from harming anybody or you? So under that, that aspect of the U.S. constitutional law, they say that's what excessive force is. But at the same time, like I said earlier, Pennsylvania law says that the police can use lethal force if they want to stop somebody who's in the act of committing a felony. So really, they had a legal right to shoot me when they stopped me on that bike. And I'm just telling you facts right now. So, but I was in the process of the only reason why I even knew about, because I'm self-critical, I should have known about the David Jones case, like to that extent. But I wasn't up on it like that. And that's a problem. But the point is that the only reason why I ran up on that information was because I'm looking up how can I sue these cats for fucking, running me over. And then, I thought it was a possibility, but then I learned of the David Jones case on a humble looking, doing research on this, for Black No Cop Zone. And I'm saying that the pigs do have the right to use lethal force. So according to their law, I have no argument against them, according to their law, right? So, and again, but this is colonialism, and the law is nothing but the opinion of the ruling class. And in the final analysis, the ruling class will bomb the shit out of you to protect its profits, right? I mean, why the hell would we think that if they won't fucking bomb the people of Iraq, they will bomb the guy? You seen that video? Look at Panama Deception, a film called Panama Deception, which is about the U.S. invasion of Panama, where they went into arrest Noriega. And look at what these fucking U.S. Marine pigs did to the people, testing out new weaponry and shit that would set a human being on flames in a split second. And how they tested that weaponry out on regular people, on Africans in Panama. Look at that video, Panama Deception. And this on that shit, that entire mission, what they called Project Just Cause, was coordinated by the neo-colonial military general Colin Powell, the one that just fucking died, right? So we never said nothing, but I'm just saying, but the point is that if they will do that, then why the hell do you think, what I'm saying? They will kill the shit out of you to protect their interests. So we got to be really clear on that. And when we get into that mentality, then we begin to think, well, how can we get them first? You know what I'm saying? How can we get them first before? Because I don't want to be the next one. Because it's not like David Jones knew that he wasn't gonna make it home that night. So at some point we gotta be, you know what I'm saying? But the way that we do it is through building a mass social movement that makes it impossible for anybody to say that the solution to the problem between police and Black people is not for the Black community itself to be in full control of the security within its community. And even by their definition, when we say our community, the community where the most police is at, all right? Like 42nd Precinct in Brooklyn, right? The one that, it's 42nd, right? That murdered Ahmaud Louima, the so-called Haitian immigrant, where they fucking stuck a toilet plunger up his rectum, raped him and then killed him. And fucking, is it the 24th? I mean, the 42nd? I don't remember, but the point is that, in these areas, you want to be funny and shit like, well, what community is the Black community? It's the precincts where all the pigs is at, where all the arrests is happening at. Those are the precincts where there will henceforth all security will be handled by an organization that was independently constructed by the people and that is run through democratically chosen but centralized authority. You know what I'm saying? And we got it all written out. So we want to demand in every city that we are in that your city council, if they got some new law they want to pass, then that should be it. That should be it. And the reason being, because obviously the police don't work. Police containment does not work. For the last how many decades have you had invested all this money in sending police in these communities, but yet the so-called problem of crime does not go away. And I dare y'all to say it because black people are criminals. They can't say that because they know that's not the reality. They know the real issue is the economic conditions and poverty that they impose on the black community that forces a significant sector into an illegitimate sector of the capitalist economy that will give the state, the capitalists, the justification to arrest you and keep police in your community and whatnot. So we saying the solution is economic development and black community control of the police. And we have a very, very, very concrete and scientific definition of what we're talking about. And I like the fact that city council people like here and other cities is starting to put forth all these reforms, these new laws that restrict the legal so-called rights of police. Like here, now the pigs cannot stop you for a traffic violation. So, and the reason why they passed the law, they say in their own writings that because black people experience disproportionate amount of traffic stops and have to plan how they gonna get home to avoid the cops and stuff like that. This was actually stated in media reports and in the city council meeting, the hearings where this law was passed. So if you can recognize that your race or your national identity is the basis for how the police interact with you, then you can say that the law should be that the community itself should be in full control. That has no interest tied to the U.S. government that has been historically making the same, we'll call it a mistake, this repetitious policy. We know it's not a mistake. We know that it's a colonial policy, but even if you want to call it a mistake, police containment does not work. So this is what we want to define, like anywhere we go. If there's going to be a march or a demonstration or a press conference or a town hall meeting, then it needs to hone in on that strategic demand. This is what we want. And in fact, use the saying, you talk about defund the police. Well, we'll take that money. The city of Philadelphia spends $1 billion, 1.1 or $1.5 billion on the so-called public safety, police, prisons, courts, and fire department, right? Over $1 billion every year spent. So whatever the budget that's being allocated to policing these communities, the oppressed and exploited black community, should be going towards this program that we're talking about that's independent. If anything, if there's going to be any kind of budget, that's what it should look like. But the reality is that we understand that the U.S. government will never agree to such terms. And but we want for the people, even those who cannot find themselves participating in any given protest because that's just not their thing. But we want to make it impossible for anybody in our community to be in disagreement with this strategic objective, So we want to make this the center of the discussion. And but it's a political question because all the while this process is being led by Black No Cop Zone. It's being led by Comrade Diop and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And so we say every time we get in front of the mic that we are anti-colonialists, we are revolutionaries, and that our strategic objective is to build a revolutionary movement to overturn our colonial relationship with the U.S. government. So none of this public policy reform shit, when we go into city council, None of that comes at the expense of our commitment to our revolutionary line. And that's why we build Black community controlled police right now. In fact, we out here right now. And we have to build independent, dual and contending power with the colonial state. And so on every occasion and in every way, we struggle for that independent capacity of the African community. But it's critical that we do so not only in our day-to-day or an unseen way, but there must be an above ground movement that openly projects the aims of our struggle, so that not only we, but the entire world understands what we stand for. And because I don't know anywhere else where this kind of discussion is being held, but if nothing else, I see it. I literally see it. It's our responsibility as Black community control of the police to be in Haiti right now, to push back the neo-colonial terror that our people is experiencing, to put organizers on the ground to build Black community control of police in Haiti right now. And the same thing goes for everywhere else on the African world. So, but that is because we are revolutionaries and we believe in building a new society. And but our strategy again involves the lawyer rights work as well as the city council resolution work as a way to deconstruct the colonial state and to achieve other objectives. And then lastly is the petition work in terms of getting the people to sign a petition that lays out these strategic demands. And these petitions would be used as you engage in city council as to say, this is the support that we have for this law, and it's incumbent upon you to push this law in your capacity as city council representative. So these are important aspects of the work that we're doing, but at the same time, like we said, the police is an occupying military force. And the only thing that, as we said before, is the resistance of the people. So we have to build a culture of resistance. And we should be constantly looking for ways to undermine the pigs, to undermine the state, and to engage in resistance against this military occupation. So that's a proactive stance that we call on all of our forces to take. And that stance is fueled by our unity with the ideas and the goals that are projected out in forums like this and of the Black Effect Coalition. So those are some things I wanted to say about Ahmaud Arbery, because a situation like that, you know, yeah, bring a strap with you, y'all. Walk around with the strap all the time. And if some white boys run up on you, then 3 white boys run up on you, you stand a far better chance of making it out of that situation if you got your strap on you, you know? But we understand, again, that the colonial state is our strategic enemy. And you are far more likely to be engaged by the pigs than you are by 3, white guys, to be honest. And the numbers prove this. You know, I'm not saying shit. The numbers show that the vast majority of Africans, in fact, the police is the leading cause of death for Black men. That came out in the report in the New York Times. So when the police stop you, you always have the option to, get busy, But if that is a decision you make, you have to take several things into consideration, I think, that we are aware of. So because the objective is to stay alive, and because this is a protracted struggle. And we already know that from revolutions before us, or anti-colonial struggles, I should say, struggles against military occupation, we've seen how the Vietnamese did it. We've seen, we've seen how Cuba did it in terms of dealing with an occupying military force in the community, and what specific tactics on a military level that we should engage in to deal with that occupation. So it's important to understand, because there's some people out here that's like heavy on the whole Second Amendment thing, and the right to bear arms. Africans have the right to bear arms. And I don't know how many of these forces, what they're, how they distinguish, armed struggle against so-called attacker from armed struggle against the military occupying force. But what we will say is that in a struggle for national liberation, any shot fired, it don't matter who shot first or what the situation was, the pigs could be right there. And we in the struggle for national liberation. And if I bang on that pig, then I would be justified in doing so. And we have and will continue to stand by and unite with such resistance as it emerges from our community. So that's important to say. But again, it is critical that we have a movement on the ground that's able to inform all the resistance to say this is what we are fighting for, this is the status in our struggle to achieve it, and this is what you must do as the people to achieve this goal. So that's why, again, it's critical that we do Black No Cop Zone, that we build Black community control of the police, so that we have a constant presence on the ground that's constantly summing up what's going on in the world. There's a lot of things that, in fact, I think we're supposed to deal with the situation in Ethiopia, which, there's a lot to be said about it. One thing that you should know for those who follow it in terms of the neo-colonial armies representing the TPLF and the Ethiopian neo-colonial government, they are in a so-called civil war to determine like which petty bourgeois organization will control which territory and essentially be the big mans to deal directly with the Chinese, the Russians, or perhaps even the US in terms of selling our resources. So, it's been a really serious struggle that has involved a lot of forms of warfare, biological warfare, starving people out. The Ethiopian government has imposed all types of sanctions on the Tigray region that affects not only the Tigray rebel army, but the masses of the people in Tigray are suffering, are starving, literally babies are starving because of these sanctions, of this blockade that the Ethiopian government imposed on that region. And again, this is self-serving, petty bourgeois, neo-colonial shit. These these guys don't give a damn about the masses on either side. And in fact, the prime minister or the president of Ethiopia, Abiy, he just called on the people of Ethiopia to take up guns against their African brothers and sisters from the Tigray side, saying that there's about to be an invasion of Ethiopian city, the capital, and you gotta get ready and get your guns up. But again, this is a war being fought amongst African workers who have been led to believe that there's a difference between them because one lives on one side of the so-called Ethiopian country and the other on the other side. But again, this shit is self-serving shit from the from neo-colonialism. But one thing I wanted to say, because some may have even seen reports that the Ethiopian government detained 17 members of the United Nations who have been there in Ethiopia to try to facilitate some kind of peacekeeping situation. And the Ethiopian government accused the UN forces for terrorist activity on Ethiopian soil, and they arrested them. They holding them right now in jail. The Ethiopian government, for one, I mean, the UN is the goddamn imperialism. We're clear on that. And Ethiopian government is some Uncle Tom neo-colonial dogs, but they also know that they have options outside of the U.S. influence, UN and the U.S. itself. Like I said, they have been in talks with China and Russia, and perhaps even India in terms of, exporting its natural resources to those countries. As a, and that's big money for the Uncle Toms in charge. So they don't have to respect the UN because of this, But that doesn't necessarily, just because a motherfucker, like talk tough about the state doesn't necessarily make them revolutionaries. And we've had situations where like snitches got into shootouts with the pigs, and but that don't make them no less of an enemy of the community in terms of their ability to unite with the state on any given occasion against the people. So, that's one thing. And there's a couple other questions that we're gonna get into next week. But I just wanted to offer up this summation and analysis, and I hope that it was helpful. Uh, we'll be on next Thursday at the same time. And y'all.